It was a bright and warm evening when the mansion buzzed with life. The grand hall was filled with laughter and the clinking of glasses. Guests dressed in their finest clothes wandered from room to room, admiring the expensive art, golden chandeliers, and luxurious furniture. They were there to celebrate another successful year for the wealthy businessman who owned the mansion. Among all the grandeur, Clara, the maid, moved quietly, her steps soft on the polished marble floor. She was young and polite, always keeping to herself and making sure the mansion ran smoothly. She carried trays of drinks, adjusted silverware, and quietly cleaned any small spills, never wanting to draw attention to herself. Clara had been working at the mansion for a few years. She knew every corner, every hidden drawer, and every routine of the household. Despite her quiet nature, she had a secret. When no one was around, she would sit at the grand piano in the music room and play for hours. Her music was her escape, a world where she could feel free, happy, and alive. No one at the mansion knew of her talent. She played not to impress anyone but to feel the music in her soul. That night, as the guests moved around, Clara noticed the businessman standing near the piano, talking to his friends. He was tall, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, and carried an air of authority that made people listen carefully to everything he said. His voice was loud and confident, and there was a hint of arrogance in the way he smiled. He enjoyed being the center of attention and often made people around him feel small or insignificant. Clara had seen him act this way before, and she always stayed out of his way. Suddenly, the businessman looked at Clara as she adjusted a vase on a side table. His eyes narrowed, and a sly smile appeared on his face. He waved his hand toward the piano and said loudly, "Play for me? You're just a maid." The words echoed through the hall, and everyone turned to look at Clara. A few guests chuckled, thinking it would be amusing to see what a servant could do. Clara's heart skipped a beat. She had not expected such a challenge, and the attention made her nervous. Clara froze for a moment, unsure of what to do. Her fingers itched to play, but fear gripped her. The guests whispered among themselves, some exchanging amused looks, clearly expecting a clumsy performance. Clara felt the weight of their eyes on her, and for a brief moment, she thought of refusing. But then, she took a deep breath and reminded herself of the countless hours she had spent practicing the piano in secret. This was her chance, though unexpected, to show a part of herself that no one had seen before. She walked toward the piano, her steps slow but steady. Each movement was careful, as if she wanted to make sure not a single note or gesture was wasted. The guests watched her in silence, curious to see what she would do. The businessman's smile was smug, as though he already knew the outcome and was preparing to laugh. Clara felt her heart pounding in her chest, but she focused on the piano in front of her. Its polished black surface reflected the soft glow of the chandelier, and its ivory keys seemed to invite her to play. As she sat down on the bench, she adjusted her posture and placed her fingers gently on the keys. The room was still, and even the laughter from earlier had faded. Clara closed her eyes for a moment, taking in the quiet and steadying her nerves. She remembered the melodies she had practiced, the way her fingers had learned the keys, and the feelings she had poured into each note. This was not about impressing the businessman or the guests. It was about letting the music speak through her. She began with a simple melody, slow and careful. The notes were soft, almost hesitant, but there was a delicate beauty in the sound. The guests leaned in slightly, some with curiosity, others with skepticism. The businessman raised an eyebrow, still smirking, clearly thinking this was a trivial display. But Clara continued, letting the melody flow naturally, each note resonating in the grand hall. She felt her confidence grow with every chord, her hands moving more freely as she allowed herself to get lost in the music. As the melody progressed, something shifted in the atmosphere. The simple tune began to carry emotion and depth that no one expected. The guests' whispers faded, replaced by attentive silence. Clara's fingers danced across the keys with a gentle yet precise touch. Her music seemed to fill every corner of the mansion, creating a connection between her and everyone present. Even the businessman, who had been mocking her moments ago, felt a flicker of surprise and intrigue. Clara played with passion and feeling, each note reflecting the countless hours she had dedicated to her secret craft. The piano became an extension of herself, and the hall was filled with a magical energy that captivated everyone. The guests exchanged glances, realizing that this was not an ordinary performance. The melody was simple at first, but it carried emotion, skill, and an undeniable beauty. Clara's music spoke louder than any words ever could. The businessman's smile began to fade as he watched her. He could no longer hide the surprise in his eyes. Clara, who had been invisible to him just moments ago, now commanded the room with her talent. Her music transformed the atmosphere from one of arrogance and amusement to awe and admiration. Clara felt a surge of pride, not because she had silenced the businessman, but because she had allowed her true self to be seen, even if only through the piano. As the final notes of her simple melody lingered in the air, a hush fell over the hall. No one moved, no one spoke. The guests were captivated, unable to process what they had just heard. Clara sat there, her hands resting lightly on the keys, her breath steady but her heart still racing. She had faced her fear, embraced her talent, and let the music tell her story. For the first time in her life at the mansion, Clara felt truly seen, not as a maid, but as a person with a gift that could touch hearts. The businessman, once so confident and mocking, stared at her with wide eyes, struggling to comprehend what had just happened. Clara realized that in that single moment, she had not only surprised him, but had also revealed a part of herself that no one could take away. The music had spoken for her, louder than any words or actions ever could. And in that silence, a new respect began to form, one that could never be ignored. The room remained quiet for a few moments after Clara's first melody ended. The guests were still trying to process what they had just heard, their faces showing amazement and disbelief. Even the chandelier above seemed to shine brighter, reflecting the energy of the moment. Clara, though her hands rested on the piano keys, could feel her heart beating fast. She had played her first few notes with care, testing the waters, but she knew there was more she could do. This was the moment she had been secretly waiting for, though she had never imagined it would happen in front of such a crowd. Taking a deep breath, Clara closed her eyes and let her mind drift into the world of music she had always loved. She remembered the countless nights she had spent practicing, her fingers learning the keys one by one, her eyes straining over sheet music under the dim light of her small room. All those hours were for this feeling, the moment when music could speak louder than words, when it could carry emotion into hearts and make people feel something they hadn't expected. Clara let the memory guide her hands. The first few notes of her second piece were slow, gentle, almost like a whisper, but there was a depth to them that drew everyone's attention. The guests leaned in, some tilting their heads, trying to understand the emotions carried in the music. Clara's fingers moved with confidence, no longer hesitant, and she allowed herself to feel every note. Her hands moved gracefully across the keys, producing a melody that was both beautiful and surprising. It was as if the piano itself had become alive, responding to her emotions and telling a story only she could tell. The businessman, who had moments ago mocked her, now watched with a mix of astonishment and disbelief. His eyes widened slightly, and he leaned forward, clearly unable to hide his surprise. He had expected a simple, clumsy performance, and what he saw was nothing short of remarkable. Clara's music was powerful, delicate, and precise all at once. It demanded attention, and it claimed respect from everyone in the room. The guests were silent, completely absorbed in the melody, their earlier laughter and chatter now replaced with awe. Clara's fingers moved faster, but with perfect control. She transitioned from soft, tender notes to a more energetic, uplifting rhythm. The music seemed to flow effortlessly, each chord carrying emotion and life. Some guests closed their eyes, letting the sound wash over them, feeling as if they were part of the story being told through the piano. Clara could sense their reactions, and it encouraged her to play with even more feeling. She was no longer playing for the businessman's approval or the curiosity of the crowd. She was playing for herself, for the music, and for the unspoken connection she could create through sound. With every note, Clara felt her confidence grow. She remembered the nights when she thought no one would ever hear her play, when she practiced alone in the quiet, worried that her talent might remain hidden forever. Now, in front of the grand hall filled with people who had underestimated her, she felt a surge of joy and liberation. Each chord seemed to lift her spirits higher, and she could see that the guests were feeling it too. Their expressions shifted from surprise to admiration, and a few even exchanged whispers of amazement, unable to believe that someone they had dismissed could be so talented. As Clara played, she allowed herself to tell a story through her music. She played a melody that carried emotion, a mixture of hope, determination, and the quiet strength of someone who had faced challenges and never given up. The piano became her voice, and she spoke through it without uttering a single word. The businessman, who had always commanded attention and authority, suddenly seemed small in comparison. He had thought power came from wealth and status, but here was a maid, showing him a kind of power that could not be bought, the power of talent, dedication, and passion. The room seemed to change with every note. The air was thick with emotion, the kind that makes people pause and feel something deep inside. Clara could hear her own heartbeat in rhythm with the piano, and it gave her energy. She allowed herself to be carried by the music, improvising slightly, letting her emotions guide her fingers. The melody soared, filled with crescendos and delicate touches, each one a reflection of her inner world. The guests were no longer merely spectators. They were part of the experience, caught up in the story she was telling with her piano. The businessman's expression had transformed from arrogance to shock. He had underestimated Clara completely, and now he was witnessing something he had never imagined. He opened his mouth to speak, perhaps to compliment or question, but found no words that could match what he had just heard. His laughter was gone, replaced with a quiet respect he hadn't felt before. For the first time, he saw Clara not as a maid, not as someone beneath him, but as a person with extraordinary ability and heart. Clara played with such emotion that even some of the older guests, who had seen many events and performances in their lives, felt a lump in their throat. The music was more than just notes. It was a story of hidden dreams, of quiet perseverance, and of courage in the face of doubt. Every key she pressed carried a piece of her soul, and it resonated with everyone in the room. The initial judgment and mockery had melted away, replaced with admiration and awe. She slowed the melody slightly, allowing the softer notes to linger and create a feeling of suspense. The silence between chords was intentional, giving the guests a moment to breathe, to absorb the emotions she was pouring out. The businessman leaned back in his chair, his arrogance replaced by wonder. He realized that Clara's performance was more than entertainment. It was a revelation. She had not only surprised him, but had also reminded everyone that talent can be hidden in the most unexpected places. As the music reached its peak, Clara's fingers moved with precision and grace, combining strength and delicacy. Each chord seemed to tell a chapter of a story she had lived but never spoken aloud. The guests felt her journey, her determination, and her passion, even if they didn't know the full story behind it. The piano became a bridge between her world and theirs, connecting everyone in the room through the beauty of sound. Finally, Clara brought the piece to a gentle, lingering end. The last note echoed softly, leaving a warm and profound silence behind. The guests sat in stunned admiration, some unable to move, others exchanging glances of amazement. Clara remained at the piano, breathing steadily, a quiet smile on her lips. She had done it. She had shared her secret, and the reaction of the crowd confirmed what she had always known. Her talent was real, powerful, and worthy of recognition. The businessman, who had moments ago dismissed her, finally spoke. His voice was calm, almost hesitant, a stark contrast to his earlier arrogance. I didn't know," he said, trailing off as he struggled to find words that could match the beauty of what he had just witnessed. Clara looked up at him, her eyes steady but kind. She didn't need to say anything. Her music had spoken for her, louder and more convincingly than any words ever could. As the applause slowly began, growing louder with each passing second. Clara realized that something had changed. She was no longer just a maid in the eyes of the guests. She was someone who could inspire, captivate, and move people with her talent. The businessman's attitude had shifted, and a quiet respect had formed in the room. Clara felt proud, not because she had silenced a mocking voice, but because she had shared her gift, and it had been received with genuine admiration. In that moment, Clara understood that her secret world of music, once hidden and private, had the power to touch lives. She had faced fear, uncertainty, and judgment, and had emerged stronger, more confident, and truly seen for the first time. The melody she had played was more than just music. It was a statement, a testament to her resilience and her dedication to her passion. And as the applause filled the room, she felt a quiet, radiant joy that would stay with her forever. The applause for Clara's performance continued to echo through the grand hall, but she remained seated at the piano, her fingers lightly resting on the keys. She could feel the energy of the room vibrating through her, a mixture of admiration, surprise, and something deeper, an awe that could not be ignored. Clara had always known her talent, but seeing it recognized, even in part, was a feeling unlike any she had ever experienced. She allowed herself a small smile, knowing that this moment was not just about the music, but about proving to herself that her years of secret practice were worth it. The guests, who had initially laughed at the idea of a maid playing the piano, were now completely captivated. Some leaned forward in their seats, their eyes wide with wonder, while others whispered to each other, sharing their amazement. It was as if the atmosphere in the hall had shifted completely. The light chatter and laughter had disappeared, replaced by a silence filled with attention and respect. Clara could feel that the moment had become larger than her, larger than the mansion, larger even than the businessman who had challenged her. The businessman himself looked stunned, his usual arrogance replaced by something unfamiliar. He stepped closer, his eyes fixed on Clara, watching every movement of her fingers. He had expected mediocrity, something clumsy or unpolished that would amuse the guests. Instead, he was confronted with undeniable skill and emotion. He realized that Clara's music was not just technically impressive. It was deeply expressive, carrying a story and emotion that touched everyone present. His lips pressed into a thin line, trying to hide his astonishment, but his eyes betrayed him. For the first time, he felt humbled. Clara felt her confidence growing. She decided to continue, to show the guests more of what she could do. Her fingers moved across the keys with precision and ease, producing a flowing, complex melody that was both lively and deeply moving. Each chord carried emotion, each transition telling a new part of the story she had been practicing for years. She felt a freedom she had never felt while working as a maid, a liberation that came from sharing a hidden part of herself with others. It was no longer about proving something to the businessman or the guests. It was about expressing her heart and letting the music do the talking. As Clara played, she noticed subtle changes in the room. Guests who had been skeptical moments ago were now fully absorbed, their eyes fixed on her hands and the piano. Some had tears in their eyes, moved by the depth of feeling in her music. Others leaned in closer, captivated by the elegance and strength of her performance. The room, once filled with polite chatter and laughter, was now filled with an almost sacred silence, broken only by the delicate notes of the piano. Clara could sense the shift, and it encouraged her to play with even more emotion, allowing herself to be carried by the music. The businessman watched her, unable to look away. He had underestimated Clara completely, and now he had to acknowledge that she possessed a talent that went far beyond what he could have imagined. He had been so used to controlling every situation, so used to being the center of attention, that seeing someone else command the room through their skill was almost unsettling. Yet, he could not help but feel a strange sense of respect forming within him. Clara, who he had dismissed as just a maid, was now holding the attention of everyone in the hall, including him. Clara moved from one piece to another seamlessly, her fingers dancing across the keys with grace and confidence. She allowed herself to incorporate slight improvisations, adding her personal touch to each melody. Her music was no longer confined to the written notes. It had become a conversation between her heart and the piano. The guests were mesmerized, experiencing a range of emotions, from joy and wonder to nostalgia and quiet reflection. Clara's music had transformed the atmosphere of the mansion, turning an ordinary evening into an unforgettable experience. As she played, Clara felt a sense of connection with everyone in the room. The music she had kept hidden for so long was now shared with people who had once underestimated her. She could see their expressions changing, their amazement growing with every note. The businessman's posture had shifted, his earlier arrogance replaced by genuine admiration. He realized that this performance was not just entertainment. It was a revelation. Clara's skill, dedication, and emotion had the power to move people, to change their perceptions, and to command respect in a way that no wealth or status ever could. Clara felt herself becoming more expressive with each passing moment. She played a piece that was both delicate and powerful, capturing the essence of her emotions and the journey she had taken to reach this point. The guests were silent, their attention fully captured by the sound and feeling of the music. Some closed their eyes, letting the melody wash over them, while others leaned forward, entranced by the skill and passion on display. Clara could feel the impact of her performance, the way it touched hearts and minds without a single word being spoken. The businessman stepped back slightly, his face a mixture of awe and realization. He had never considered that someone like Clara could possess such extraordinary talent. The words he had used to mock her moments ago now seemed foolish and hollow. He had learned a lesson in humility, one that he would not forget. Clara's music had not only revealed her talent, but had also challenged the assumptions and judgments of everyone present. In that moment, the power of music and passion had surpassed all barriers of social status and expectation. Clara continued to play, allowing herself to feel every note, every rhythm, every subtle change in tempo. She had spent years perfecting her skill in secret, and now she was free to express it fully. The music became a reflection of her journey, her perseverance, and her courage. The guests were captivated, experiencing a range of emotions that words could never convey. They could feel her story through the melody, understanding the depth of her talent and the strength of her character. As the performance reached its climax, Clara played with intensity and emotion, filling the room with sound and feeling. Each note was deliberate, each chord carefully crafted to convey a message of resilience and beauty. The guests were completely absorbed, their previous judgments and expectations replaced with admiration and respect. The businessman watched silently, realizing that he had underestimated Clara in every possible way. He had thought that talent and greatness could only come from those with status and wealth, but here was a maid, proving him wrong with every note. Finally, Clara brought the piece to a gentle, lingering finish. The last note hung in the air, and the room remained silent for a few heartbeats, as if no one could immediately process what had just happened. The guests slowly began to clap, their applause growing louder and louder, filling the hall with sound and admiration. Clara sat back slightly, her hands resting lightly on the keys, feeling a sense of accomplishment and fulfillment. She had shared her talent with the world, and it had been received with genuine appreciation. The businessman, still recovering from the shock, stepped forward and spoke, his voice quieter than before, tinged with humility. I had no idea," he said, unable to find words that could match the beauty and power of Clara's performance. Clara looked at him calmly, her eyes steady and kind. She did not need to respond. Her music had spoken for her, conveying everything that words could not. In that moment, she had proven her worth, not just to the businessman, but to everyone in the room. The guests continued to applaud, some rising to their feet in admiration. Clara felt a warm sense of pride and joy. She had faced fear, doubt, and judgment, and she had emerged stronger, more confident, and truly seen for the first time. The music she had played was more than just notes on a page. It was a testament to her dedication, her talent, and her courage. And as the applause washed over her, Clara knew that this was only the beginning of her journey, a moment that would stay with her forever, shaping her path and inspiring those who witnessed it. The silence that followed Clara's performance hung in the grand hall for a moment, heavy with awe and disbelief. Guests were still processing the skill and emotion that had poured from her fingers. Some leaned forward, mouths slightly open, as if they had seen something miraculous. Others had tears glistening in their eyes, touched by the depth and beauty of her music. Clara, sitting at the piano, felt a mixture of relief, pride, and exhilaration. She had poured her heart into each note, and the response was overwhelming. The world she had hidden behind the role of a maid had finally been revealed, and it was powerful. Clara glanced at the businessman who had challenged her, his usual arrogance nowhere to be seen. He stood frozen, leaning against a marble column, his hands loosely at his sides. His face was pale, eyes wide with astonishment, and his mouth slightly open. The smirk he had worn earlier was gone, replaced by an expression of stunned admiration. For the first time, he had been humbled by someone he considered beneath him. The realization hit him slowly, like a weight settling into his chest. Clara was not only talented. She had exceeded any expectation he could have imagined. The guests began to murmur softly among themselves, a wave of admiration spreading through the hall. Some were whispering about Clara's hidden life, about the countless hours she must have spent practicing in secret. Others were praising the emotion and precision in her performance, marveling at how someone with no formal recognition had such a profound ability. The atmosphere had shifted completely from the playful arrogance and polite laughter at the beginning of the evening to genuine respect and amazement. Clara could feel the change, and it filled her with a sense of warmth and accomplishment. She looked down at her hands resting lightly on the piano keys. The tension that had gripped her moments ago was gone, replaced by a sense of calm satisfaction. Clara had not only played music, she had communicated something beyond words. Her talent had become a voice, telling a story of dedication, passion, and hidden potential. The hall was no longer a room full of guests. It had become a place where her music had created a shared experience, a connection that transcended status and expectation. As she allowed the silence to linger, Clara began to think about the journey that had brought her here. She had grown up in a modest home, far from wealth and luxury. From a young age, she had been drawn to music, captivated by the sounds and the feelings they could evoke. Her parents had encouraged her curiosity, but life had demanded practicality, and she had taken a position as a maid to support herself. The piano had become her sanctuary, the place where she could nurture her gift in secret. Nights spent practicing alone, fingers aching, eyes weary, had all led to this moment. Now every struggle felt worth it. The businessman finally spoke, his voice quieter and more measured than before. I never imagined," he said, trailing off. His words were hesitant because they could not fully capture the magnitude of what he had just witnessed. Clara met his gaze calmly, letting the silence speak for her. She did not need to defend herself or explain her talent. The music had already done that, proving her worth and commanding respect in a way that no words could. Guests began to approach Clara slowly, some offering words of praise, others shaking their heads in disbelief. One by one, people acknowledged the skill and passion they had just experienced. Each compliment, each smile, reinforced what Clara had felt during her performance, that her hidden world of music had the power to touch hearts and minds. She realized that talent, no matter how quietly nurtured, could not remain invisible forever. It had a way of shining through when the moment was right. The businessman watched quietly as the guests expressed their admiration. He felt a mix of emotions: surprise, respect, and a touch of embarrassment. He had underestimated Clara, viewing her only as a maid, someone without status or significance. Now he understood that talent and greatness were not determined by social standing or wealth, but by dedication, passion, and the courage to share what was within. Clara's performance had not only humbled him but had also left a lasting impression that he could not ignore. Clara, sensing the shift in the room, decided to stand and address the guests briefly. She thanked them for their attention and for allowing her music to be part of the evening. Her voice was soft but confident, carrying a sense of poise and grace. The guests responded warmly, their applause renewed and heartfelt. It was a moment of genuine connection, where appreciation was not forced or polite but sincere and spontaneous. Clara felt the weight of the past lift slightly, replaced by a growing sense of confidence and recognition. After the brief exchange, Clara returned to the piano for a short, improvised piece. This time, she played from her heart without thinking of structure or perfection. Her fingers moved freely, and the music flowed naturally, filled with spontaneity and emotion. The guests were mesmerized, sensing the authenticity and joy in every note. Clara's improvisation demonstrated not just technical skill but creativity, presence, and a deep love for music. It was a performance that could not be replicated, unique to the moment and the feelings that inspired it. The businessman stepped closer, observing the subtleties of Clara's movements and the nuances in her music. He realized that every expression, every variation in tempo, was a reflection of her personality and her journey. He had seen performers before, but none had conveyed emotion so purely and effectively. Clara's presence at the piano, once overlooked, now commanded his full attention. Her talent had revealed a strength and depth that transcended social labels or assumptions. Clara continued to play, gradually returning to a slower, more reflective melody. The notes were soft and lingering, resonating through the hall like a gentle reminder of the journey she had undertaken. Each chord carried a sense of history and emotion, a narrative of perseverance and quiet determination. The guests were silent again, absorbed in the beauty of the moment. Clara felt the power of music as a universal language, one that could communicate truth and emotion without words or explanation. As the final notes faded, Clara lifted her hands from the keys and allowed herself a small, relieved breath. The hall was filled with a quiet reverence, the kind that follows something deeply moving and unforgettable. The guests remained seated for a moment longer, soaking in the experience. Clara could see that her music had left a lasting impression, that her talent had shifted perceptions and created a sense of admiration that went beyond the superficial. The businessman, now fully composed, approached Clara with a measured expression. "I owe you an apology," he said sincerely. "I judged you unfairly. Your talent, it is remarkable." Clara nodded politely, accepting his words without resentment. She did not need to gloat or assert herself. The performance had already spoken louder than any argument could. The recognition she received was genuine, and it carried a sense of fulfillment that went beyond accolades or praise. As the evening continued, guests approached Clara individually to compliment her and express their amazement. Some asked questions about her musical background, curious to understand how someone so talented had remained hidden for so long. Others shared their personal feelings, telling her how deeply they had been moved. Clara listened with grace and gratitude, feeling a sense of community and connection that she had rarely experienced. Her music had become a bridge between her private world and the lives of others, creating understanding and admiration. The businessman, who had challenged her initially, remained nearby, observing quietly. He had learned a valuable lesson about assumptions and humility. Clara, who he had dismissed without consideration, had demonstrated not only skill but also resilience, courage, and passion. He realized that true greatness could appear in unexpected places, and that talent should never be underestimated based on appearances or social standing. Clara's music had reminded him, and everyone present, that respect must be earned through dedication and authenticity. Clara felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration as the night progressed. Performing in front of a crowd, especially under unexpected circumstances, had been nerve-wracking. Yet, she had risen to the challenge, and the result was more rewarding than she could have imagined. The applause, the admiration, and the recognition were not just external validation. They were affirmations of her own belief in herself and her passion. She realized that her journey as a musician, though hidden and private until now, had a place in the world where it could be shared and appreciated. The evening eventually drew to a close, but the impact of Clara's performance lingered in the hearts of those present. The guests left with a sense of wonder and inspiration, talking quietly among themselves about the maid who had captivated them with her extraordinary talent. Clara returned to her duties, but her mind remained alive with the memory of the music she had shared. She understood that this night had changed her life, opening doors of opportunity and recognition that she had never expected. In the quiet moments after the guests departed, Clara sat at the piano once more, reflecting on the experience. She felt a profound sense of accomplishment and joy. Her secret, her passion, had been revealed, and it had touched lives in ways she could not have imagined. She knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in her life, one where her talent could flourish, be recognized, and continue to inspire. The piano, once a private sanctuary, had become a stage for her courage and expression, and she embraced the possibilities that lay ahead with excitement and hope. The night after Clara's performance in the Grand Hall, the mansion felt different. There was a quiet energy that lingered in the air, as if the house itself recognized that something extraordinary had taken place. Guests who had witnessed the evening's events had left talking about the maid who had stunned everyone with her piano playing, and stories of her talent spread quickly, reaching even those who had not attended. Clara continued with her daily duties, but her mind often wandered back to the piano and the music that had captivated the room. She felt a sense of pride she had never experienced before, knowing that her secret talent had been shared and appreciated. In the days that followed, the businessman approached her several times. He was no longer the arrogant man who had mocked her in front of everyone. Instead, he carried a respectful air, observing her quietly, sometimes even asking her about her music. Clara responded politely, keeping her humility while acknowledging her talent. She knew that the recognition she had received was not something she could demand. It was earned through her skill and passion. The businessman began to see her not just as a maid, but as a person of remarkable ability and depth. This change in his attitude was subtle, but it spoke volumes about how perceptions could shift when someone revealed their true self. Clara's colleagues, who had worked alongside her in the mansion for years, also began to notice a difference. They spoke to her with more respect, no longer treating her as merely another servant in the household. Some approached her with curiosity, asking about her piano practice and the music she had played. Clara shared her story gently, explaining how she had spent countless hours practicing in secret, driven by love for the instrument and the joy of expressing herself. Her tale inspired those around her, demonstrating that dedication and passion could lead to moments of recognition and change. The piano itself seemed to call to Clara more often now. Each day, she found herself drawn to its keys, eager to explore new melodies and refine her craft. The mansion, once a place of routine work and silent observation, had become a place of creativity and opportunity. Clara felt a growing connection between her responsibilities and her music. She realized that while her role as a maid gave her structure and discipline, her music allowed her freedom and expression. The combination of both began to shape her into a confident, capable, and inspired individual. One afternoon, as she practiced quietly in the music room, the businessman entered without knocking. He watched from the doorway, listening in silence as Clara played a complex piece with emotion and skill. She did not notice him at first, absorbed in the flow of the music. When she finally looked up, she was surprised to see him there, but she did not feel fear or nervousness. Instead, she recognized his genuine interest and respect. He approached slowly and said softly, "Your talent is remarkable. I never realized how powerful music could be when shared with such passion." Clara nodded, grateful for his acknowledgement, but she let the music speak for her once more, resuming her playing with renewed energy. As the weeks passed, Clara began to receive invitations to play at local events and small gatherings. The news of her talent had spread beyond the walls of the mansion, reaching people who wanted to witness her skill firsthand. She approached these opportunities cautiously, understanding that each performance was a chance to share a part of herself with the world. With each event, Clara grew more confident, discovering that her music had the power to inspire, move, and connect with people in ways that words could not. The businessman continued to support her quietly. He offered to help organize small concerts within the mansion, providing resources for Clara to practice and perform in a more formal setting. He was no longer a figure of mockery or arrogance, but a silent supporter, recognizing her talent and encouraging her growth. Clara appreciated his guidance, not because she needed validation, but because it allowed her to focus on her passion and continue developing her skills. She felt a sense of partnership, not subordination, in their interactions. During this time, Clara also began to mentor others who expressed interest in learning music. She shared her experiences and techniques, encouraging them to practice with dedication and patience. She emphasized the importance of perseverance, explaining how her own journey had been filled with challenges. Yet each challenge had strengthened her resolve. Clara's influence grew beyond the mansion, inspiring others to pursue their passions and embrace their talents, no matter the obstacles. Her life started to balance between her duties and her music. While she continued to perform her role in the household with diligence, she also carved out time to explore new compositions, practice improvisation, and refine her technical skills. The piano became both a refuge and a stage, allowing Clara to express her emotions and creativity freely. Each performance, whether in the mansion or at a local gathering, strengthened her confidence and reinforced her belief in the transformative power of music. Clara's story began to attract attention from local newspapers and media outlets, who wanted to highlight the talent of the maid who had amazed a room full of guests. She was careful in her interactions, remaining humble while sharing her journey. She emphasized that her music was a personal passion, a means of expression that had grown into something that could inspire others. Her modesty, combined with undeniable skill, made her story all the more compelling to those who read about her or heard of her performances. The businessman, witnessing the positive response and growing recognition Clara received, felt a sense of pride in supporting her. He realized that true leadership was not about asserting dominance but about recognizing and nurturing talent wherever it existed. His initial arrogance had been replaced by respect and admiration, and he learned that humility and appreciation could open doors to remarkable experiences and discoveries. Clara's presence in the mansion had become a reminder of this truth. One evening, after a particularly moving performance at a local gathering, Clara returned to the mansion feeling fulfilled and inspired. She sat at the piano, reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. From quiet practice in secret to performing in front of an audience, each step had shaped her into a more confident and expressive individual. The applause, recognition, and respect she had earned were not just external validation, but an acknowledgement of her dedication and passion. She realized that music had given her a voice, a way to communicate her emotions and story to the world. As she played softly, experimenting with new melodies, Clara understood that her journey was far from over. There were still opportunities to grow, new pieces to master, and new audiences to reach. The piano had become a lifelong companion, a partner in expression, and a conduit for connection. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for the experiences that had led her to this point, from the initial challenge in the grand hall to the ongoing support and admiration of those around her. Clara's story continued to unfold, not as a tale of sudden fame, but as a gradual journey of growth, recognition, and inspiration. Her music became a source of joy, not only for herself but for everyone who heard it. The mansion, once a place of routine work and hidden potential, had transformed into a space where talent could shine, dreams could be realized, and respect could be earned through dedication and passion. Clara had proven that true greatness could emerge from unexpected places and that talent, when nurtured and shared, had the power to change lives and perceptions alike. Months had passed since that unforgettable night when Clara had first played the piano in the grand hall of the mansion. Her life had changed in ways she had never imagined. The initial shock and surprise of the guests had evolved into admiration and recognition that extended beyond the walls of the house. Invitations to perform at local events had turned into opportunities at larger venues, and Clara found herself slowly stepping into a world she had once only dreamed about. Despite all the changes, she remained grounded, carrying with her the humility that had always defined her character. The mansion, which had once felt like a place of routine and expectation, had become a hub of creativity and inspiration. Clara's presence there now carried a new weight of respect, and the atmosphere had shifted to reflect her talent. Other staff members, who had previously regarded her simply as a colleague, now looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and admiration. They asked questions about her music, sought guidance, and even tried to learn from her example. Clara responded with warmth and patience, sharing her experiences while encouraging them to pursue their own passions, whatever they might be. The businessman had also changed, though more subtly. He had learned the value of humility and the importance of recognizing talent regardless of social status. He was no longer quick to dismiss those he considered below him. Instead, he observed quietly, offering support when appropriate and acknowledging Clara's achievements. He had become a silent ally, understanding that success and greatness could appear in the most unexpected places. His respect for Clara had grown, not just for her talent, but for her character, dedication, and the way she inspired those around her. Clara's journey into the world of music continued to expand. She began to collaborate with other musicians, exploring new compositions and styles. Each performance was a learning experience, teaching her not only technical skill but also how to connect with audiences on a deeper level. She discovered that music had the power to communicate emotions and stories that words could not convey, and she felt a profound sense of fulfillment knowing that her playing could touch hearts and change perceptions. Each note she played carried a piece of her story, and people responded to it with admiration and respect. One afternoon, Clara received an invitation to perform at a community center for young aspiring musicians. She eagerly accepted, seeing it as an opportunity to share her passion and inspire others. The room was filled with children and teenagers, their eyes bright with curiosity and excitement. Clara played several pieces, demonstrating both technical skill and emotional expression. She spoke to them about her journey, emphasizing the importance of dedication, practice, and belief in oneself. The young audience listened intently, absorbing her words and the music she played. By the end of the session, they were inspired, motivated to explore their own talents and pursue their passions with determination. Back at the mansion, Clara continued to balance her duties with her musical endeavors. She found a rhythm in her life that allowed her to honor her responsibilities while pursuing her dreams. The piano had become not just a tool for performance but a companion, a source of comfort, and a channel for self-expression. Each day, she practiced, experimented with new melodies, and refined her skills, always seeking ways to improve and connect with others through her music. Clara's story soon attracted wider attention. Local newspapers and online platforms shared her journey, highlighting how a maid had stunned a room full of wealthy guests with her extraordinary talent. People were captivated by her humility, dedication, and the transformation she had achieved through her music. The narrative of a hidden talent emerging in unexpected circumstances resonated deeply with audiences, inspiring many to look beyond appearances and recognize potential wherever it might be found. Despite the growing recognition, Clara remained true to herself. She did not seek fame for its own sake, nor did she let accolades define her worth. Instead, she focused on the joy of playing, the connection her music created, and the impact it had on those who listened. Her performances were heartfelt, each one an authentic reflection of her journey, her struggles, and her triumphs. People were drawn not only to her skill but also to the sincerity and passion she brought to every note. The businessman, witnessing Clara's continued success and the respect she earned, reflected on the lesson she had taught him. He understood that true value was not measured by wealth, social standing, or appearances, but by dedication, talent, and the courage to express oneself fully. Clara's presence had shifted his perspective, and he admired her not only as a musician, but as a person who had risen above limitations and expectations to reveal her true potential. He had learned to appreciate the depth and strength that can exist in those we might initially overlook. As Clara's reputation grew, she began receiving opportunities to perform at larger venues, collaborate with established musicians, and even teach masterclasses. Each new experience brought challenges and learning, but also fulfillment and growth. She approached these opportunities with humility and determination, knowing that each step was part of a larger journey. Clara's story became a testament to the power of perseverance, passion, and the courage to reveal one's talents despite fear or doubt. Through all of this, Clara remained connected to the mansion where her journey had begun. She continued to perform there occasionally, sharing her music with the staff and guests who had once underestimated her. Each performance was a reminder of how far she had come and how her dedication and courage had transformed both her life and the perceptions of those around her. The piano, once a hidden refuge, had become a stage for her talent, a symbol of her journey, and a source of inspiration for everyone who experienced her music. Clara also found joy in mentoring others, sharing her knowledge and experiences with aspiring musicians. She emphasized that talent alone was not enough. It required dedication, perseverance, and the courage to step forward and share it with the world. Through her mentorship, Clara inspired a new generation of musicians to pursue their dreams, showing them that greatness can emerge from unexpected places, and that passion and commitment are the keys to unlocking potential. The culmination of Clara's journey was not marked by a single performance or achievement, but by the ongoing impact she had on the world around her. She had transformed from a quiet maid into a respected musician, mentor, and source of inspiration. Her story demonstrated that true talent and dedication could break barriers, change perceptions, and create lasting influence. Clara had shown that with perseverance, humility, and courage, one could rise above expectations and touch the hearts of many. In the quiet moments of the evening, Clara would often sit at the piano alone, reflecting on her journey. She played not for recognition or applause, but for the joy of music itself. Each note carried memories, emotions, and the lessons she had learned along the way. The mansion, the performances, the applause, and the recognition were all part of her journey. But the music itself remained her true companion and her most profound source of fulfillment. Clara's life had been transformed, but she remained grounded, humble, and focused on her passion. She understood that success was not just about being recognized, but about embracing one's talent, sharing it with others, and inspiring change. Her story continued to inspire those who heard it, serving as a reminder that greatness can emerge from the most unexpected places, and that perseverance, courage, and authenticity are the keys to unlocking potential and creating a lasting impact.